I'm delighted to shortly introduce you our ladies, our panelists today, Marlene Zakur and Nadine Soye. I'm happy to give you a short overview of what you can expect during the next approximately 60 minutes in our digital event. First, I will make a short EU Tech introduction with the core feature of EU Tech. Then I will introduce in detail our panelists, their bios today, they will share their valuable experience before we answering questions from the audience. So please allow me to give you a short introduction about EU Tech Chamber. So we started 6 years ago as a European Technology Chamber, but today we have companies that join us from Australia to Canada, from Latin America to Japan. So we have a very simple vision. There is technology obliges. We need to use technology to enhance our businesses, lives, health, and education, and everything else. As you can see, this is our organizational structure. So therefore, we have regional alliances, such as DACH and country like China, and then continents like Africa and Latin America. Of course, we have tech alliances where today we are talking about digital transformation. I'm also director for smart cities, and as well as impact alliances like finance, SDG, climate action, women in technology, and many more. So we produce over 200 webinars a year with 684 speakers. We are currently working heavily on planning hybrid events and virtual exhibitions. And our average last year was over 50,000 registered people, and 90% of these registrations were owners and decisions makers from the company. And we are trying to have really state-of-the-art titles. Like today, it's very important to talk about these topics. So what we are providing, we have more than 400 networking meetings. We provide access to speakers and panelists for our members to raise up their profile and raise up the profile of their company. We create business opportunities by dedicating networking meetings. And of course, we are into the EU projects and fundings, which is unique access to EU tenders and worldwide funding dedicated networks event. This is our ecosystem. We divided into Insight programs and Tech Forum. Insights are focused around our magazine, which is Visions for Europe, then white papers, which we published last year, and we are currently working on position papers that will be done by October. In terms of programs, we have social media, digital transformation programs, and awards, climate action partnerships. I will just mention awards. Last year, we had SDG award, where we awarded for each goal 10,000 euros each company. So we give away 170,000 euros just for this award. And of course, Tech Forum, the location where we speak today, with the virtual booths for a company, virtual expos, physical events, and we also help our partners and advocates to create their own events. So why to wait? Engage and benefit with us. Come with us, and we'll talk. You can. I will later on. I will get my contact address in the chat. Also, panelists can do that too, as well, so we can all stay in touch. Also, we have a director for partnership and institution if your organization is institutional setup, and we also have a director for membership with the EU Tech. So there was I was trying to get very short introduction, so we don't waste any of time. Again. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today in our digital event. I'm very confident that it's going to be very interesting for you to have better understanding of such a great topic, which is embracing equality, digital transformation, and gender. So it's my pleasure and honor to introduce our panelists today. Marlene Zakur, after a master in architecture, Marlene joined Keyword in 2009. and startup focused on technology, digital, and cultural industry. During the 9 years, she spent and managed a diverse group of 60 people. In 2018, Marilyn joined the chairman office of MR, the largest real estate company outside of China. During her 2 years there, Marilyn has been teaching graduate and undergraduate classes at the Faculty of Economics, as at the USJ, as well as ASA, with a focus on strategy, marketing, design thinking, content creation, and so on. In December 2017, Marilyn graduated from INSEAD exclusive as an executive MBA, which is why in 2020 she started with the pandemic. She started her own company called Cosmic Centaurus to support executives and leaders in shaping future to work, learning, and leading their organization. Our second panelist today is Nadine Soyer. She has been a management consultant since 2005 and many years of experience in large enterprises and very well-known management and IT consultancies. She's passionate about how technology is changing the way we work and think, which digital skills and mindsets are required. Her mission is to help companies, managers, and teams to succeed in a digital work and to accompany the changes there. This includes new ways of working and leadership approach, skills, and competencies for digital working and right use of the tool. So it's great pleasure and honor to start discussion today. I will just, before we start, I would like to throw some gender diversity workplace statistics that I read preparing for this webinar, and it's coming from different sources, Fortune 500, McKinsey, and many others. So 6.6% of all Fortune 500 companies have women as their CEOs. Companies employing an equal number of men and women manage to produce 41% higher revenue. The GDP could increase by 26% by diversifying the workforce. Gender diverse companies are 50% more likely to notice higher financial return. 40% of people believe there is a double standards against women. Only 23% of C-suites are made up for women. So what an introduction for discussion today. So question for both panelists, and we can start with Nadine. Why you think this is important title to talk about?
Yes, I also have researched some numbers for the webinars and I have the Deloitte's latest Global Human Capital Trend Study found out that 78% of managers see diversity and inclusion as a competitive advantage. And I find this number is quite impressive and high when I see we have a gender gap in the companies, or in most companies, as you said, Ned. And also there's a McKinsey diversity survey found out that gender diverse companies perform 15% better than other firms. And PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers also have a survey that 85% of CEOs polled said that having a diverse and inclusive workplace population improved their bottom line. So we have these numbers, and but I also find out, or I see from my experience, we still have a gender gap in companies, and that's why it's important topic to talk how digital transformation or the digital area can bridge this gender gap and how we close it, and that's why an important discussion today.
Thank you, Nadine. And Marilyn?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that the two of you are saying. I think also coming from a part of the world I think the representation of women in the workforce is actually the lowest in the part of the world that I come from, in the Middle East. And we've seen this week a lot in the news. We're following the stories in Iran at the moment around this young woman who died following police brutality because she took her veil off. I think in the world of business, I'm truly a believer that business can be a force for good. That if we think about how we can create value for society, as well as economic value for the people who contribute to the workforce, there is so much that businesses can do in order to address so many of the issues that we see in the world today. And I think that's not just true in the Middle East, but even sadly recently in the US. So as a militant, we're starting to see a lot of the things that women have acquired over the years being taken away from us again. And I truly believe that economic impact is something that can maintain good standing in society. And I believe that businesses can contribute to that. And they can benefit from it. So the reason we still have to talk about it is it's all still very fragile, as we're seeing today in the world.
Thank you so much. What an introduction to the topic. Nadine, what effect does technology or digital workplaces play in changing women's role in society today?
Yeah, I think the digital transformation or the digital area offers huge opportunities and possibilities for women in the workplace or in society. And this also helps to bridge gender divide and a gender gap. And yeah, technology gives access to women, not only here in Europe, and we have access, but also in the third world party. There are a lot of women who now have access through internet to services, to knowledge, to education. And technology can also increase the employment opportunities, because when you have more flexible work, or you can work everywhere, when you have tools in place, then you have more flexibility and balance out. When you think the career choice, do you have family or a job? It's always a big issue for women. Now you can combine your life with family better when you use technology in the workplace, or you have more flexible working arrangements. And that's why also remote work, not only the technology for access to education, but also the remote work force and trend is a huge opportunity for women. And I think education is crucial to bridging the gender gap and the gender divide. And when we think of access to education, now we have a lot of online education opportunities, also for women who has no access to education at all. In Europe, it's not that problem, but I think of Africa or third world party. Now women can have better education and also increase the income and have a better life in the future. And that's why technology is a great opportunity for women in society.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you so much. Marilyn, how we can improve gender distribution in teams? What is your practical experience?
Yeah, so what I've seen that works, I think, is what I'm going to tell you about. I think, first of all, role modeling is very important. This is true in business. This is true in politics. This is true in entrepreneurship. Girls who see other girls or women who look like them, whose stories are being told, are more likely to enter into STEM, into technological jobs, into politics, you name it, into entrepreneurship. And so I think telling the stories of women is incredibly important, and showing role models within organizations. I know that when different organizations run A/B testing around recruiting, if the landing page of a website has more women on it, then more women are likely to apply for the job. It sounds really stupid, but there are very, very small things that you can do. And while, there's a big debate around positive discrimination and whether, imposing quotas works or doesn't, and what happens, I always like to refer to a bit of a controversial quote, but that I think is really important to explain why I think positive discrimination could be the only way we get there. I remember reading this quote where this woman said, "There will be true gender equality when incompetent women get the job." Right? So I know it's a bit aggressive, but it's just to say that until we're able to get more women in the workforce and we're able to have a more natural competition, that involves, you know, everybody having the same odds, the same education, as Nadine was saying, the same access. There is so much that is pitted against women today that I also think imposing strict rules around how you recruit, how you represent women, and yes, maybe sometimes a bit of positive discrimination, I think are all things that I've seen work and are essential to get us to a place where we're operating from a place of, you know, equality and having a level ground to work from.
Thank you so much. And as you're both involved in transforming businesses in digital transformation, I'm wondering how you actually on the ground, how you convince CEOs and directors to, especially in private businesses, because they always ask about return on investment, how this is going to impact, you know, my return on investment, or am I going to make more money if I do this? How you convince them to pay attention to gender and even diversity and equity and inclusion, how to invest their resources, time, and of course money, and how you explain this to them. So Nadine, you can go ahead, please.
Yeah, it's quite difficult. I can also only give the numbers or survey studies. So in Germany, when you have studies, this always works for people. They would like to have numbers and also a study around it. And yes, I only can say that mixed teams are more economically valuable for the companies, and they have a higher impact than other companies. And also in the digital transformation or digital areas, we now have products that addresses a huge, wide, broader audience or clients. And when you produce these products or develop these products only with a male team, for example, you can't address the needs of women or other people. So now I have a huge access for my products and services. Before the digitalization, when I was in Germany, it was hard to sell my services or my digital services or digital technology products or software, or when I have an offline product to the world. And now we have access to the whole world, and we also have a broader audience and target group. And for that, we need a diverse team to address all people and to bring all the perspective in our development processes. And that's why it's crucial to think of diverse teams and also have more women in management positions or in the development teams. And therefore, it's what you can do. You have to have our awareness for this, and then say in the long term, your company will be more valuable when you have diverse teams.
Yeah, and there's a saying, at least in my country, I don't know if this applies to you. It says that if you want to get something done, give it to the woman. So
there are really studies about skills, men and women, and there are proof. I don't have the study here now, but I read that women have better skills for problem solving. I don't know why.
Okay.
but women are better at problem solving, and so that's what you said, Ned. When you have a problem, give it to the woman.
I think women are more serious, more focused. That's at least my experience. So
on average.
Same questions for you, Marilyn. How you convince?
I agree. I mean, first of all, I hope to find CEOs that don't need convincing on this matter. But if they do need convincing on this matter, I think what Nadine is saying around numbers is very important. And here's a couple of numbers for you. If we're only going to be, let's say, cold-hearted and only look at the dollar value of things, right? But we're in the middle of a shift of assets to women. Like worldwide, more and more women are going to own more of the global wealth. I think there's a $22 trillion shift in assets to women. And we own about a third of wealth, but we know that in the future that's going to start increasing. As Nadine was saying, if you're trying to attract women as customers, then you need women as designers, you need women as developers and as decision makers and as product designers. You need diversity, and I think diversity in general, not just towards gender, but any sort of difference, be it like the phenotype, like what we can see on our skin and on the way we look, but also diversity in age, diversity in personal experience and preferences and culture. An example, I had done an intervention for a financial services alliance, and there was a number from a report that showed that just if you look at the financial services firms as a niche, they're leaving about $700 billion in revenue on the table by designing products and solutions that don't address the reality of women. So if you do need numbers and dollar value to show that that's an important thing for your organization, you will be drowning in numbers. You can just go online and Google that. And I think in every industry, you will find something comparable. And so it becomes, beyond the societal reasons to do that, there's also a lot of economic reasons to do that. And so I don't think it's a debatable question whether that should be on everybody's agenda.
Thank you very well. So we know, Nadine, that it was a gender divide always, even before digital transformation, and many different things. If we go back to the history, it was even worse, and what is connection between digital transformation and actually the question is, how can digital transformation bridge and help to let's say remove this gender divide?
Yeah, I think about the digital transformation in education, that offers you huge opportunity. You have more access to education, to these massive open online courses, these MOOCs, where you can have access to new knowledge and skills. And I think women to participate in the job market, they need the necessary skills. And for that, women now have better access to education through online platform or online universities, and to gain these necessary skills to participate in companies. And what we also see, that women are underrepresented in tech careers or in tech education. So raising the awareness about education opportunity is the key for women and girls, and also motivate girls to go into tech jobs or to study technology or to start learning a language for development or programming language. That's what's really important to bridge the gender gap, that we get more women in these ICT jobs, I think. And also offering more flexible work arrangements for women can bridge gender gap, so that women can have really the possibility to bring together their family and career goals. So women still decide between family and career. When you go for career, you decide maybe against kids or against family. We also see when women try to bring this together, they get out of the jobs, and when they come back, they don't have the same opportunities than their male colleagues, or they lose financial in the long term. They lose a lot in that perspective. So, but bridging the gender gap is, I think it's education and this flexible work arrangements we now can offer through technology.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you so much. We start to receiving questions in a chat section. Tom, thank you so much for your question. Ladies, if you when it's not your turn, if you have a time to answer it, or we can wait it till the end to compile questions to. And I really encourage the rest of the attendees to. It's very interesting. It's very wide topic, and I encourage you to ask questions. Marilyn, I'm very, very curious about your experience in the Middle East. I spent some time over there myself, but what does the digital gender gap look like over there? If you take, let's say, United Arab Emirates as a center where it's very developed, and then you go to, as you mentioned, you go to Iran or Iraq or Palestine, or what is your opinion?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. So, there's a sentence I always like to say is that averages are for losers, because if you look at the average in the Arab world, you will not, as you point out, get a fair representation. I think there are countries in the Arab world, surprisingly places like Oman, UAE, etc., where actually more women have access to the internet and to digital as a broad definition than men. And then you have countries where it's the absolute opposite. I think the worst in the Arab world is Iraq, actually. And so you have like a vast differences between different countries in this region. But I think on the whole, as I mentioned earlier, we still have the lowest representation of women in the workforce. And considering that most of the jobs today and in the future are going to require digital skill sets, there's a lot to be done in that space to both, create the skills within women that make them able to perform these jobs and improve the gender gap. I think something else that we have in this part of the world that can be quite important in creating that is access, actually. So we're even a step behind the upskilling piece, which is that most women in the region, I think the number was like more than 50%, have to share a device with somebody else, or don't have access to internet on their phone. I think men are, the number was 1.8 times more likely to have internet on their mobile device or to own a smartphone. So we are even looking at a level below that in terms of pure accessibility, then following up with training and upskilling. So I think it's the solution in this part of the world requires working on multiple levels.
Thank you so much. Question for both, and again we go with Nadine, and we have another question from Tata. Thank you so much. If let's say companies or organizations are saying, well, we understand the importance, how you actually explain them how to create initiative to move from zero to somewhere?
Yeah, let's also have more awareness about giving job opportunities to women also in maybe AI team, artificial intelligence teams, or development teams. And also, be better in the work arrangements for women, or what women needs in the workplace. And having a more woman-friendly environment and mindset in the company. But it's a huge shift when I start from zero to get somewhere. So I also have only, as I said, the numbers, and have motivated women to develop themselves or give access to education and the skills. And from somewhere, it's like when you have a male-oriented company, you bring in women, you also have the male work environment. So it should be address both gender, and you have to find out what both genders need, or also women needs, and you have to change the work environment. I think that's crucial to make your company also productive for female workforce.
Thank you, Nadine. Thank you so much. And Marilyn, same question.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'll start off by saying that I'm not a diversity and inclusion expert, in the sense that I'm not someone who's implemented these from the point of view of being a consultant, but definitely from the point of view of being a manager. And I really love the point that Tom made in the questions about, should we only focus on gender diversity or diversity at large? And I'll say a couple of things towards that. Like, this is where I would start, actually, which is to define, what does diversity mean for us? Now, on the question of whether we should focus on gender diversity, and here I'll say that I mean genders across the spectrum, right? So not just the gender binary of female and male, but however you choose to define yourself within your gender. I think that there's an excellent book, if you guys haven't read it, it's called Sapiens. And it looks at the history of mankind. And one of the chapters is actually dedicated to discrimination across all sorts of either minorities or large groups like women. And what's very fascinating about this, what this book presents as an argument, is that some forms of discrimination have a historical start point. So they weren't true universally, meaning they're not true across all cultures. And they weren't true across all times, meaning there's a moment in history where you can say that this minority was begun to be discriminated against. But women have been discriminated against across cultures, across time, and across geographies since as far as we've been recording human history. So on the one hand, I definitely agree with Tom that diversity is not just a male-female problem. On the other, I'll say that the female discrimination has been slightly more dominant than other forms of discrimination. But the other thing I'll say that maybe is a paradoxical to what I'm saying, but I think two things can be contradictory and true at the same time, is that another important thing is to define, what do we mean by diversity? For example, I remember speaking to somebody who worked in a European office of an American company. And the American company had created a very clear direction around diversity and inclusion, and it was on their agenda. But for example, it involved quotas around recruiting, Black Americans and Hispanics. Now, try to apply this in Oslo. That's just not going to work. Not because, people don't want to recruit diverse workforce, but just because there may not be individuals that represent these subgroups in Oslo, and maybe diversity means something else over there. So I think having a clear definition of what diversity means, and I mentioned earlier, yes, phenotypical diversity is important, but other types of diversities, for example, age groups, for example, cultural backgrounds, and so on, is equally important. And so that's where I would start, by having a clear definition of that, because then what initiatives will allow you to get there will fall into place as long as you have a vision for what you're trying to achieve.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I also have a comment on this question, or to you, Marilyn. I think to think about where the problem is starting. And I think it's already starting in when you raise the child or your girls in the families, because there are learned patterns we have as women that we should keep small or stay small in some ways, or yet it's also when you don't say it or to a child, you act like this. And you have to raise the children that they are getting more a mindset of independence, or to have a self-awareness, and to have awareness for self-growth and a more presence out in the world. And it really, really starts in the early years, when you have learned patterns that you should stay small in some ways, or you can't achieve anything, or the man can achieve more in life. Then also you behave like this subconsciously. And when you behave subconsciously, you also have a presence out in the world and or in your company that keeps you small, even if you don't like it or don't want to. So when you act subconsciously in this staying small, then you don't have the presence, and then managers or your male colleagues can keep you also small in that ways. And I think it's a mindset shift we we also have in not only in education and digital skills, but also for you personally. That's important.
I totally agree with you. I want to relate this study that a friend of mine who's a psychologist told me about to prove your point, Nadine, is that in this study they went to school children and they created 2 groups that had like a distribution of boys and girls inside of them. And they gave them a math test. And for the control group, they just gave them the test and that was it. And for the other group, they told the class that this test was designed to be easier for girls. Just that message, that was it. And the outcome was that the girls of that group scored higher, not just than the boys in their group, but than the control group as well. And to your point, what we are socialized to believe about ourselves and to want and to think that we can have access to is such an important piece of this big puzzle. And to your point, it really does start in the very early formative years.
Thank you, ladies. We have some more comments. This is really good interaction with audience. More comments, more questions, and Nadine, as you are expert in digital skills, what is a gap gender in that particular topic?
In that particular topic, I think we have a gap gender in the technology sector and technology shops. There are also, I have some numbers researched, and according to the World Economic Forum, women only make up 26% of all jobs in artificial intelligence. So the technology we need for the future. And the situation is even more in cloud and data than women. The numbers are when you have cloud or data jobs or data analytics jobs, there are only 15% or 12% women in these jobs. I know it's related to the world. In Europe, I think it's better. When I work with my clients and the digital transformation projects, I'm really happy that also a lot of women are in the development team or in the ICT jobs. But I also have the awareness that in these projects, women take over more the soft skills tasks like change management and enablement and training. But when it comes to development and technology, there are mostly men in these jobs and performing these tasks. So I don't know. Maybe we also see that women are better in these soft skills, and this is a strength. But I think women are also take over programming and development products. So, and these really tech-related jobs, there is a gender gap we have to solve.
Right.
So, at the moment, we have a gender gap in the hard skills, in the soft skills. Soft skills, there are more women, and hard skills, there are more men. And we have to bring it together. They have a more balanced out workforce.
Right. And there's a certain industries where, for example, manufacturing usually or construction industries where will be more men because you have to
engineering,
work outside, and then you will have probably women in accounting, in HR, and things like that. Working in the offices, but as we are digitizing and we are talking about maybe IT companies, etc., then there's a lot more opportunity to get the women on board. What in regards to that, Marilyn? What's the positive effect that you would like to outline on having more women on the team?
Yeah, I mean, we've already discussed a few of the data points around diversity, increasing performance, innovation, etc. There's a really incredible study. It's called "Why Some," if you Google "Why Some Teams Are Smarter Than Others," it was conducted with a professor from MIT. Essentially, they found, this is just one argument, right? But they found that teams that have more women on them, so not just gender equality, but more women than men on them, those are teams that outperform everybody else. And the reason for that is because women are socialized. Maybe in 2,000 years that will be different. But for now, we are socialized to be more perceptive to other people's needs and preferences and strengths. And because there were more women on the team, they were better at making sure that everybody had a voice, that the diversity of the team was truly taken advantage of, that everybody's skills were best utilized. Again, because we're socialized to care for what other people want, sometimes to the detriment of our own preferences, it turns out that teams that have more women on them can outperform all the other teams. And so, you can find miles and miles of data around this, but that's just one food for thought data point.
And also, when you bring in more perspectives through diversity, you're also more creative. That's what we also see in these teams. And that's the point why they outperform other teams or are faster.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Question for both of you, and we can start with Nadine. What is your experience when we had the peak of COVID-19? How that was affected by gender diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, COVID was a pandemic, and pandemic in the first place is a very bad thing. But honestly, for the workplace transition, it was a really good thing, because now companies really saw, or they experienced, that we can have more these flexible work arrangements and can work from everywhere or can work from home. And we are maybe even more productive than in the office space. Before pandemic, when I talk to companies, they say, no, it's not possible to do remote work. We don't trust our workforce, that they do the jobs. And now these same companies say, oh, remote work is great. We don't go back to the office. So this was a huge impact on the flexible work arrangements or working from home. Now women can have a balanced out. I bring the kids to school, or I can have also the kids at home. We saw the kids were at home for homeschooling during the pandemic. This also worked. It was a bit stressful. But now I think another perspective was also that men worked from home, and they realized what it is about to raise kids and have your daily work. So they were away in the office, and the women were at home and tried to manage maybe work and kids. And now maybe men got to more awareness what's about raising kids and doing your job. And then also now have team meetings, and it's really common that women say, oh, I have to leave earlier because I have to pick up my kid from school. That's totally normal for now, and nobody says, oh, that's weird. And before pandemic, when you say that, oh, I have to leave earlier because I have to pick up my kids at home, you were the low performer. And now it's not a case of low performance when you have kids and family. A woman came of the kids. They see women are really great in their jobs. They are really high performer. But when you say to your manager, boss, I have to leave early because of the kids, then regardless of your productivity or performance, in their mind, you were a low performer. And I think that changed a lot with pandemic, and that was a huge impact for bridging this gender gap. Also to change the mindset. It's everything. I think everything in life is about mindset. When you shift your mindset, you can shift other things. It should be work together, but without a mindset shift, you can hire women, but when you don't have the mindset to work with women, then it won't be productive. Or women would leave the company very soon.
Thank you. Marilyn?
Yeah, I mean, to Nadine's point, I think it's about making sure that we create the right environment for women. Now, I'll say that you might have seen that while the conversation has shifted in a positive way, one of the negative impacts of the pandemic was that women lost their jobs at a higher rate than men. That comes for a couple of reasons. Part of it is because industries where women tend to work were more hardly hit, things like hospitality, for example, but also because women tend to be the caregiver. Even of course, we've liberated ourselves a little bit in the West. We are still predominantly the ones that have to take care of children, parents, sick members of the family, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of women simply could no longer afford to be at work because they had to be caregivers. And so I think, to add to Nadine's point, the one thing that I'll say, and Indra Nooyi, who's the CEO, who used to be the CEO of PepsiCo, is quite an advocate on this point. And I think I'll just want to echo that, is that the conversation is in the right place, but we need to keep talking about how we create the right environment for caregivers to be part of the workforce. Nadine gave, the example of picking up kids from school or taking care of a loved one, who needs our support. But if we don't think about how to bring caregivers into the workforce and create the right benefits and support for them to be able to do that, de facto, we are excluding more women than men, and de facto, we will not be able to bridge that gap. So to me, that's an incredibly important topic.
Yeah. I think we touch on something very, very important here, talking about remote work. So what is your opinion, not just on gender gap, but generally, you have some big companies like Tesla saying to their employees, you need to come back to the offices. So what do you think, how this is going to shift, and is there any kind of like a syndicate will step up and say, hey, I'll give them a choice, or what do you think, what is going to happen?
I think what's going to happen is that people will leave companies which force the workforce back to the office. And in the future, we will have some more remote hybrid work arrangements. And we have to learn to work in these work settings and arrangements. And most people now realized that they don't need the office to be productive or to be creative or do their jobs. And I think it's a lack of trust when you force your people back to the office. And you mentioned Tesla. I think it's a special thing, because when you see how Elon Musk and how he acts in the company, he said you have to go through the company to be creative and to see all what problems can we solve in the company. So we really walks through the manufacturing and see all the problems. And he has that mindset. I have to walk through the company. I come together the people to be creative, but it is his working style. And when he said, "Oh, everybody has to go back to the office," then he forces his working style to the other people. But other people has different working styles. And I see the people who say, "Oh, I would like to go back to the office. Why not? Then offer this." And I have a lot of people who say, "I don't need the office. I can work from everywhere and combine, more life setting or work-life balance around this work environment." So, yeah, you have really to look what your processes will need, and then say, okay, at that point we need touch points, and then we offer office. But at the most of the time, we can work more asynchronously to be more productive or to have more flexible work arrangements. So it really depends on the processes and where you do have the touch points and where you have to come together. But we all see that we can work very creative and be very creative and be productive at a distance. And I think people will leave companies which said, "Oh, you have to go back to the office."
Madeline, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with Nadine. I think that what the pandemic has allowed us to do in these kind of either return from home mandates or the opposite, companies that are now fully embracing flexibility. To me, the point is really about, beyond the gender discussion, it's also about human-centric approaches to work, right? We've come to realize that not everybody has the same needs. Some people do want to be in the office and some people don't. Some people can work from this location or that. Whatever preferences are, I think companies are now coming to terms with the fact that it is their job to create optionality as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. And there are companies that have beautifully demonstrated that that optionality is possible at scale. One example that I really love is Spotify, who have not said we're all going remote or we're all coming back to the office, but rather have said that they understand that every individual may have different preferences and they will accommodate for all of them, and have found a way to create a great system. You can go and read about it on their blog that allows them to do this while it being financially sustainable for the organization. So I think it's really about taking a step back, understanding everybody's needs, trying to listen to them, and then trying to design flexible work arrangements that just allow people to be adults and make decisions for themselves. People aren't trying to go to work to do nothing. Nobody wakes up in the morning thinking, I'm so happy I can go to work, pretend to do nothing, and get a salary. We use work, for most of us, is fulfilling. It's important. It allows us to create meaning in our lives. So I think if we start from a place of believing that everybody really wants to contribute to something important and then creating the right environment for them, that's where hopefully that's where the future of work looks like and how it can be more inclusive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Nadine, why, I'm very curious to put innovation into diversity. So why diversity is important for innovation part? What is your experience about that?
Yeah, we touched this point. We already touched this point that diverse teams are more creative. We see the numbers and outperform other teams that are not that diverse. And for product development and technology, when you have a broader audience and target group, or you target also women now in the economy, they have more economic value, then you have to bring in also these perspectives, what women needs from these products. And I think when you have only a male team developing products for women, they don't understand what women need. So to get this innovation-driven teams, you need to bring in all the perspectives from culture. It's not only gender, but culture, gender, to develop the right products for your audience, or to get new ideas what your audience may need, and then develop new products for the audience. That's why we need diverse teams to be more innovative.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Merlin, what is your and I would love to hear example if you can. What is your personal experience with the gender bias in digital teams?
How much time do you have?
We have 7 minutes left.
Yeah. Let's say 2 minutes will be fine.
I mean, I remember, like, I have anecdotal stories that I'm sure everybody will feel the same way about. I remember once I went. So first of all, I was in the tech world, let's say, for the first 10 years of my career, in a company that I loved, with amazing male leaders who were friends and amazing people, right? So it's not about personalities or specific individuals. I think it's a systemic thing, right? I was always the only woman in the room. And I remember once I went to a conference in Freiburg, and I took a picture of the crowd. And this was a tech conference. So it was organized by Smashing Magazine, who worked a lot in UX design and front-end development and so on. And you couldn't see a single woman in that picture. And I think, I'm sure that Nadine has similar stories. It's again about that role modeling, that representation. Even the most well-meaning leaders can sometimes make mistakes. I remember my number two in that company, who I love to death, like I would hand him over my children, is how much I think he's an incredible person. One day, someone new had joined the team, and he was walking around the offices introducing them to everybody. And I remember he picked out a few of the girls who were in that room. So he was saying like, whatever, Nadine, Marilyn, whatever. And I was thinking, why is he bundling the women together? I was like, oh, maybe because they're all front-end developers. Maybe that's what he's going to say. He's going to say like, this is our front-end development team. And then he said, these are the ladies on our team. And I was like, I took him aside and I'm like, hello, they're engineers, just like everybody else. You don't need to point them out. I know you were well-meaning, and in some cultures, like, in the Middle East, it's actually respectful because like you think that you're creating an environment where you're like, putting them in the front, opening the door, so to speak. But it also meant that they were discriminated as women. I think there's so many small stories like that. I think what matters is not to, I don't really like the American model where everything becomes like a question of like, we have to attack each other and men get canceled and we can't have an open discussion. But I do think it's equally important to raise that, even using a bit of humor, also to be forgiving. Like everybody discriminates against somebody. Like maybe someone discriminated against me as a woman and I discriminated against somebody else as something else. I think we all try our best. It's important to just create an environment where that discussion can happen, where there is the forgiveness and openness, and you allow people to grow and improve and become better, as opposed to creating a very hostile environment for these discussions.
Nadine, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I've got a lot of personal stories. I don't know, when I decided to do my executive MBA at the business school, I worked for a company, I don't say any company names here, but maybe when this person listens, he recognizes himself, I don't know. I left the company because I had no opportunity as a woman to do my executive MBA at the business school. Because they only sent their male or the men to the business school to make the careers or the management careers. And I found a company that offers me the opportunity. Then I left the company and I had a dinner, or not a dinner, it was a lunch with my boss on my last day. He wanted to be friendly, but it was like a show. And then he just hit me on the side at the end of the lunch and said, yeah, it's a waste of time or money that you go to business school because then you get a child and then you're out.
Wow.
And that was a really personal story. And I said, okay, I'm happy that I leave this toxic place. And I also want to encourage women, don't stay in these toxic places. You have a lot of new opportunities to find jobs now remotely, and there are companies and managers out there that supports you. I really, really encourage, look around. Please don't stay in these toxic places, leave them, be motivated, and also take a bit of risk to leave toxic places. You will find other positive places out there. The world is open, and please, please look around. That's what I would like to, my last words in this webinar, to encourage all women out there.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So looking at the time, unfortunately, we have only 2 minutes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marilyn. Thank you, Nadine, for participation. And of course, thank to our audience for joining our session today. Thank you for dedicating your time. We had some fun. We make some people laugh with actually panelist stories. So in that perspective, in the name of Technology Chamber, I would like to present a little thank you to our panelists today. So this is our promise in partnership with the EU Tech Climate Action, that we will place the tree for Nadine, as well as in Africa, of course, as well as for Marilyn. So ladies, thank you so much. Great discussion, great webinar, and thank you so much. And I'll see you on the next digital event on October 20th. And remember, technology obliges. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You are currently the only person in this conference.